Thank you for joining us for this episode of Inside Town Hall. I'm your host, Madeline Shields. In the past few years, the city of Sioux Falls has experienced much growth and significant changes, and here to tell us about it is City Councilor Rick Kiley, who had a front row seat for the last 8 years, who represents the Southeast District as well. And his guest is Mark Cotter, who is the Director of Public Works. Thank you both for joining us. Let's talk a little bit about everything that's been going on since you began as a city councilor.
Well, thank you, Madeline. It's hard to believe that nearly 8 years have come and gone already. It seems like I was just in the decision-making process, making that final decision whether I was going to run for this office or not, and I am so glad that I have. I've been committed to giving back to the community that has provided me with so many opportunities over my lifetime. Having been born and raised in the city, it was my time to give back. And boy, has it changed during my lifetime. And it's changed significantly in just the last 8 years since I started this service.
Sure, and one of the things we want to talk about is the Veterans Cemetery that you were working on as part of your time on the City Council. Tell us a little bit about that and how it is up and running now.
Well, thank you. This the cemetery is definitely one of my favorite projects that I had the opportunity to work on. And I also need to give credit to several people. Councilor Rex Rolfing served with me on the City Council 4 years ago. We were approached by the South Dakota Veterans Council. They explained to us that there was not a state veterans cemetery in the state of South Dakota. We have a national cemetery located just outside of Sturgis, and then there's another national cemetery outside of Minneapolis, but there was nothing local, and we have over 50,000 veterans in this East River portion of the state whose burial needs were simply not being met. And so they approached us and asked, what can we do? So we looked first, we looked with private developers to see if there was any property that any private developer was willing to direct us to or potentially donate. When we struck out there, then we started to look within. And lo and behold, it turns out that we have a real estate department within the city of Sioux Falls. And that's when we approached Mr. Mark Cotter here. He's another individual that if that cemetery, the cemetery we have today, would not be there without the support of this gentleman here. And so he and others identified the property just north of the city of Sioux Falls, and I'll let Mark address that a little bit more in detail, what that property was originally planned for.
Sure.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me today, and it's been quite a journey to go through all the different actions that you've been a part of in your tenure on the council, and somebody that's always looking forward to make something better, and so I've always appreciated working with Councilor Kiley. When the group came together to really look for where would they ideally like to go and site the new veteran cemetery, one of the opportunities came up is that the city bought land decades ago when they contemplated doing a reservoir in the Slip-Up Creek area. And that's generally north and east of Sioux Falls. In that same time period, further studies were done. Was going to be not a great long-term water source because the solution was, first the city at the time only had a fraction of the land. And so there would have been lots more land to buy. But then the idea is that when the Big Sioux River was running full on the good years, we'd pump water into this reservoir. And then when it was dry, we'd actually pump it back and then run it to the treatment plant. From an efficiency standpoint, probably long term where we're at, not good, but at the time it was the best idea available. When the Lewis and Clark water system really came to be a reality, when that group got formed in 1990, and ultimately when we got our first drop of water from that system in 2012, really opened up the opportunities to say, all right, now what is a better purpose for the land in Slip-Up Creek? And so we identified and turned on some properties that the city owns, actually the Water Division of Public Works. And this team really rolled up their sleeves and started to walk some of the pieces of land, and I think found probably the most ideal piece of land that's about 60 acres. Didn't take very long to get the right people to the table. Councilor Kiley is one of the champions of it. And we parceled off about 60 acres of this land. It's a nice rolling topography, and the State Veterans Group just did an amazing job building what they said they'd build, and really setting this system up for success.
Well, one of the other things that happened under your watch was the City Center. It's a $23 million cost. The council approved it in April of 2016, and it opened in 2018. That was a pretty big turnaround, quick turnaround for government. Tell us a little bit about that.
It was a quick turnaround, but at the time it seemed like it took longer than what you may think, because it wasn't without its controversies, because it passed. Then we had new council members that came on board that rescinded the funding. Mayor Huther at that time then vetoed that, and we had to uphold the veto. And fortunately, our side prevailed in that effort, because I think it provides the service that our citizens expect to receive when they come to the city center. And I'll let Mark talk more about those services.
Yeah, it's been a terrific addition to the community, the city, especially for the customers. Now when you drive on essentially Dakota, and if you're at 10th and Dakota where Carnegie Town Hall is where the council meetings are, and then as you progress north, you have City Hall, and then this was built just right on the north side of the 8th and Dakota ramp. So there's actually a linkage to the city center. It was built on city land. The city always had a parking lot there for many years, and so kind of utilizing current infrastructure. But the departments that are in there probably see some of the highest volumes of customers, from planning and building services, if you need a deck or build a house or build a commercial building or renovate one. They get by far the most customers, so they're on the main level. And then Parks joins with their space. Public Works is on the second floor. We at one point were in about 7 different locations, so to actually have us all on one floor, just the synergy is terrific. And then to actually move IT over from the annex, so the link could actually be realized, has been, I think, just a terrific result. The last thing we did too is that, a number of streets in downtown have, with the one-ways, there are 3 lanes. To make sure that we could get more parking for the customers, we repurposed one of those lanes, put the road on a diet so we could create a lot of angled parking, and now just use 2 lanes. So just a lot of things came out of it to ultimately be in a much better position for the customers.
We tried to build it to meet the needs of the city for the next 50 years, and we immediately built out the 3rd floor shell by, as Director Cotter mentioned, by moving the link over, or moving IT over, which made room for the link in the North Annex building. And there's actually the option of building yet a 4th floor on the building too.
Okay. Well, at this point we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back we're going to get an update on the Public Safety Center. We'll be back in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Dr. Michaela Koenig with Falls Community Health. On average, there are nearly 800 bicycle-related fatalities in the United States every year, and Sioux Falls has had more than its fair share. Children and young adults have the highest rate of serious injury, including concussions. Wearing a properly fitted bike helmet will reduce your risk of a concussion should you take a spill. For more information, talk to your doctor or check out the Heads Up campaign at cdc.gov.
Welcome back to Inside Town Hall, where we are visiting with City Councilor Rick Kiley, and his guest on this segment is Scott McMahon, the Director of Metro Communications. Thanks for joining us. Let's talk a little bit about the new Metro 911 Center and the Public Safety Center.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to discuss this. This has been one of my favorite boards that I've served on for 8 years. And the first time that I toured the facilities, which are in the old county jail, I was appalled at the work conditions that our dispatchers are in day and day out, 24 hours a day. And talk about services that you want delivered. They were being delivered very professionally, but not under great conditions. So it has been my goal the entire time to get them out of the quarters that they're currently in and into something more suitable for them to do their job. Very tight quarters, absolutely no natural light. It's just something that needed to be done. And so I'm just so happy that we've been able to include Metro 911 with a new public safety building that is under construction right now at 60th Street and Sycamore Avenue. And Scott can talk a little bit more about the conditions that they're in currently and what to expect in the future.
Well, sure. Thank you, Councilor Kiley, for having me today to speak a little bit about Metro Communications. Metro has been in its current site since about 1980, so over 40 years we've been located at the same site. You can imagine how the city of Sioux Falls and Minnehaha County has changed in the past 40 years. Probably the original space that we started out with has already been expanded as far as we can expand it in our current facility. We're simply out of room to handle any more growth in the city as far as population, or in our case, calls for service or telephone calls. So when the opportunity became available for us to become a part of the new public safety training campus, we just couldn't thank Metro Management Council enough. Metro Management Council is 2 county commissioners, 2 city councilors, and the mayor of Sioux Falls for considering us as part of that project, because this is just an exciting time to be involved in the 911 profession, but even more exciting to be involved in 911 here in the city of Sioux Falls because of this expansion and change in technology and equipment that we'll see in the new facility.
Sure. If you think about when that opened in 1980, you can just imagine there must just be cords and wires and things everywhere as technology had to be added.
Sure.
That was not even discovered yet.
Correct. So we have a raised floor in our facility. So underneath that floor is a spider web of all kinds of different cables and connections and cords that were used throughout the years. And our plan is once we leave that facility, we'll maintain that facility as a backup center. We are required by South Dakota rules to have a backup center. So we'll keep that facility, but we'll go in and we'll remove some of those cables and cords that aren't needed anymore and just try and do some updating.
And I would just like to add that it is great that we can move Metro into the new public safety building, but it's also housing police and fire training needs too. As it is currently, the fire department cannot even use their own burn building. It's not safe to do so. The police don't have an adequate firing range to practice firearms safety. So the whole facility is going to serve all 3 departments that work hand in hand together to serve the needs of our citizens. So it's great to be able to include Metro into this. I mean, they had 1 bathroom for up to 50 employees, and I don't think it even met ADA requirements, and we do have people with ADA needs. So it was badly needed.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about how it's going to affect your work, having the police, fire, and the dispatchers all under one roof. Yeah. Will the communication even be that much better?
We already have great partnerships with law enforcement, fire, and EMS in the city of Sioux Falls and in Minnehaha County, but that'll be improved upon by having a facility where we're literally working under the same roof together. So we look for even better partnerships than what we have today, and just having the ability to stop and at the fire area of the building and say, good morning, or, just having those conversations on a daily basis will be so much more beneficial than today. Today we have those conversations, but they're on the radio, they're on the phone, they're not necessarily in person because we are in a facility that just doesn't join up with any other partnerships. So we're really looking forward to be in the new facility and have those conversations and even strengthen that relationship even more.
Sure.
Again, I'd just like to state that this wasn't all me. It was obviously other members of the administration, but without this gentleman, this project would have been much more difficult to justify. Scott came to us from Watertown, South Dakota. Our gain is their loss. He has just been wonderful serving as the director and provided valuable information to help justify this inclusion.
When will this be completed? Is there a timeline?
We're looking at October of 2023 as a completion date. There will likely be some periods of time ahead of that. We'll begin equipment installation, furniture installation, those types of things, but we're looking for an opening date of October of 2023.
I bet your employees were wishing it was October 22, but they must be very excited.
Yeah, we're just very excited. You know, like I said, we just came out of a pandemic with COVID, and a lot of workplaces are putting up different barriers and things to try and protect employees. Well, at this new facility, we're planning for the future as well, so we'll have more availability to keep employees a little bit further distance than our environment today. Today we literally sit about this close to one another. In our new facility, that'll be 7 to 10 feet apart where their workstations are. So that'll help with that type of thing. But then again, there'll be a lot of amenities such as you know, just a place to have a locker, a place to have some fitness training, kitchen amenities, restroom amenities, a brand new training room. So when we bring on new people into the organization, they'll be in an environment that's comfortable, that's adapts to learning and that type of thing. So we're just looking forward to all the amenities that'll be available. But they're amenities that are necessary. They're not nice to haves. They really are need to haves.
Sure. Well, this will not be the last time we hear about it, and I'm sure you'll be back on the show talking about it when it is opened and it's all ready to go. So. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be back to visit with City Councilor Rick Kiley and get his reaction to finishing up his 8 years on the City Council. We'll be back in just a moment.
The City of Sioux Falls has an easy way for you to help your community. Simply download the City of Sioux Falls mobile app. The app can be used to ask a question or to report a variety of nuisances like potholes, graffiti, streetlights not working, abandoned vehicles, and more. You can even upload a photo with your report. Every report is immediately routed to the appropriate team so they can quickly respond. In addition to tracking your reports, the app allows you to view reports submitted by other users and learn when they've been resolved. Go to the App Store or Google Play stores and download the City of Sioux Falls app today.
Welcome back to Inside Town Hall, where we are visiting with City Councilor Rick Kiley, and this is his last show on the City Channel, on CityLink. Let's talk a little bit about some more of your accomplishments or some of the things that are near and dear to your heart as you were on the City Council for the last 8 years, and one of those things are the city parks. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, parks are very near and dear to my heart because they played such a key role in my life as a kid growing up in the city of Sioux Falls. We grew up just south of 37th Street on Prairie Avenue, south of Augustana University, at that time Augustana College. My father worked at John Morrell and Company. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, caring for my oldest sister, who was born with spina bifida, and then myself and my two brothers. So we certainly were not in need, but we didn't have a lot of the extras that some families had. One thing that we could take advantage of and that we did take advantage of were our parks, and especially Dan Dugan Park, or it was more of a playground, just 3 miles to the east of us. And I can remember going there in the morning, coming home for lunch, going back again, coming home for dinner, and going back until it was dark and I had to come home to go to bed. It just served our needs. So it was my intention when I started on the City Council to make sure that we had equity throughout our park system, and that I could make sure that we provided the same opportunities, maybe even better opportunities for not only children but for adults in the community, and opportunities even better than what I had experienced as a kid and as a young adult. One of those projects was Hayward Park. It was identified as being in need of updating, and it was brought to our attention by the Promising Future Funds people, Steve Hildebrand, Jan Nicolai, approached the school district and the mayor and the Parks Department, Don Kearney, and asked about what can we do to improve this park. And Hayward Park is in the northwest portion of the city, and very economically challenged portion of our city. And so the city did it right. They established a plan, they did a review and an analysis of what the park currently has and compared it to other parks. So we, all in an attempt to bring the equity that I talked about just a little bit ago. So just this past week, we broke ground on Hayward Park, and we did it with participation from the Hayward students. I just loved it because it gave me an opportunity to get back to my roots of teaching and working with the kids as I spoke. But you know, if it had not been for Promising Futures, I'm not sure it would be on our radar as early as it is. It was in the 5-year plan, but as a result, now the city's going to commit $2 million. Promising Futures committed $65,000, and Leadership Sioux Falls committed an additional $100,000. And as a result, they're going to have all new playground equipment. They're going to have a splash pad that they never have had before. It's not a swimming pool. I actually describe it as, we've talked about food deserts lately. There's an aquatic desert up in the northwest portion of our city, but this will help to at least get us started. And as I encourage the city and the Parks Department, let's just make this a first step. The splash park, now let's start focusing. Once we meet the needs of our existing pools, let's start focusing on getting a pool up in that northwest portion of the city. So there were never restrooms at the park, so now the kids won't have to run home just to use the bathroom. There's an exercise loop that will also accommodate people like my sister Ruth, who was confined to a wheelchair her entire life, and a dog park. When they did the analysis, they found out that at least 50% of the residents in that part of the city owned a dog. So now they're going to be able to have a dog park, and it actually gives the individuals an opportunity to get out and meet one another and to make new friends. So it's as much about the people as it is about the dogs.
You know, reflect for just a second on how that idea came. That, you know, it's a quality of life issue to improve a park, but look at all of the different partners who come together. Growing up in Sioux Falls and then being in a leadership position in Sioux Falls, what's your reaction to those kind of partnerships that come together in this community?
The private-public relationships that we've developed and that have taken place during my 8 years is absolutely phenomenal. I can't think of a more giving community than Sioux Falls. We've had so many examples of this taking place in our community during my 8 years. In fact, it's something I talk to the kids about. Is it easier to solve a problem working on it by yourself or working with others? This community gets together, whether it's private civic organizations, the school district, the county, or city government. It's been phenomenal.
Talk a little bit about your other accomplishments as your time on the City Council comes to a close.
Well, it's hard to believe, but one of the first ordinance I introduced was a Peddler's ordinance that just requires people to make sure that they have the proper license and identification, and that was a response of a citizen that reached out to me. I chaired the billboard task force early on because shade places allowed little pockets to be developed with billboards, and there were a number of citizens that were concerned about that, so we went in and tightened up the rules and regulations regarding the placement of billboards. The Annexation Task Force, wow, that was a fun one. That took place over a period of 8 months. I really do firmly believe we could have accomplished it in 8 weeks, but unfortunately, people thought that it was about annexation, where it was about improving the process of annexation. And we worked hard to do that. So some of the developments around the areas now are actually able to retain some of the amenities that they have. They can keep their septic systems as long as they are in good operation. They do not need to put in curb and gutter if that's what they desire. So some of those rural amenities that might attract others to the city of Sioux Falls, they can retain. And then when it is time to hook up to city water, they'll have that option, and so on. So that was a challenge, but we did get through it. I've been a huge supporter of economic development in the city because we need to provide jobs. We need to provide a tax base so that we can keep taxes overall low for every citizen. So there is a benefit for that. And I've worked very closely with Southeast Technical College, Councilor Erickson and myself. We've sponsored, I believe it's $600,000 over the last several years because Southeast Technical College provides programming that I really do believe can help us meet our workforce needs and keep people in the city of Sioux Falls. And as a professional educator, I do believe education plays a key role in resolving those workforce needs. And as we discussed earlier with Director Cotter, I've always been a supporter of streets and improvement of our infrastructure, because without the infrastructure, City of Sioux Falls cannot grow to meet the growth needs. And that's one of our biggest challenges right now, is growth. So we have to continue to plan well in advance so that growth takes place in an orderly fashion. One of the things that I've enjoyed the most, though, is working with individual constituents. We've talked about some big projects that I've had the benefit of participating in, but working with an individual to just help resolve whatever their need may be has been as rewarding as some of these large projects have. And generally I'm just a conduit. I'm somebody that helps to put them in contact with the individual, the city employee, that can really meet their needs. So it's not always me, it's just helping them make those connections, and I have found that to be very rewarding. And I've mentioned my sister Ruth a couple of times. I've been a huge supporter of individuals with ADA-related issues, and I've especially been a supporter of paratransit over the years too, to make sure that it's available and that the costs are affordable.
All right. So what's next for you?
Well, I never say never, but I'm going to take a break from this type of a role for now. My wife retired a few years ago, and because of my current position, we just haven't had a lot of time to travel. Of course, a pandemic has impacted that as well too, but would like to have the option of maybe doing a little more travel. I plan on continuing to work with the South Dakota Safety Council. I did retire from the Sioux Falls school system after 33 years, but I continued in my role with the South Dakota Safety Council, and I'll do that for the next few years at least.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time on the City Council and for your time here on Inside Town Hall. So best of luck to you in the future, and thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's our time for this episode of Inside Town Hall. For more news and information, you can go to siouxfalls.org. Thanks for watching.